Good morning. I'm Teresa Baker, Democratic Services Officer to the Hertfordshire Local Government Pension Scheme Local Pension Board. Adam Mitchell stepped down from the board in May 2025. This was 4 months in advance of the completion of his 2-year term as chair, which was due to end in October 2025. Consequently, the position of chair is vacant. The position of vice chair is also vacant. So, in the absence of a chair and vice chair, it falls to me as representative of the Director of Law and Governance to open this meeting and undertake the election of a chair to complete the remainder of Adam Mitchell's term as chair of the board. Please note that in accordance with the Constitution, the biennial election of chair and vice chair of the board will take place as scheduled at the meeting of the board on 10th of October 2025. Before I go any further, I'm required to read out the following announcements. The Council will be holding this meeting electronically. Members of the public may also attend this meeting in an electronic capacity, and there is a link on the Council's website for them to do so. Members of the board are asked to keep their microphones switched off until called to speak, and to switch their microphones off once they are finished speaking. Cameras may be left on throughout the meeting if members wish. If you experience connection or other technical issues, it may help to switch your camera off. Cameras should be switched off if and when speaking in the meeting. To indicate a wish to speak, members should use the raise hand function. Use of the meeting chat function is exclusively for voting. At the end of the debate on each item of business, there will be a vote. Voting members only, not subs, should vote using the meeting chat function for indicating for, against, or abstain. The chair will declare the result after each vote. Breaks of at least 15 minutes will be held every 2 hours and will be taken after a speaker in the debate has finished speaking. If we are voting, the vote will be concluded before the break is taken. Other breaks will be incorporated as appropriate. So, on to the election of a chair for the meeting. As stipulated in the Constitution, an employer representative needs to be elected to complete Adam Mitchell's 2-year term as chairman of the board. Jolyon Adam, the Schools and Academies employer representative, has offered to stand for the role of chair. He's been on the board for almost 4 years and has considerable experience of the subject matter. So I call for a member of the board to nominate Jolyon as chair for the remainder of Adam Mitchell's term.
I do so nominate Jolyon Adam for the remainder of the term. I'm Rob McCarthy, an employer representative.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Could I have a seconder for Jolyon as chair? Thank you, Liz.
Happy to second.
Second, Liz. Are there any other nominations for chair? No. Okay. In that case, Jolyon, you've been elected chair of the pension board until October. I'd like to hand over to you now. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Teresa. I just wanted to start off by talking about some membership changes. So obviously a bit of change in the board membership. I'd like to welcome Councillor Liz Needham to the board as the employer representative for Hertfordshire County Council. Also, Councillor Penelope Hill has been appointed to the board as the employer standing substitute for Hertfordshire County Council. She can't be with us today, so she's covered in the apologies as well. Frances Buckley has stepped down from her role as the member side standing substitute. So in terms of apologies today, we've received apologies from Sarah Ansell, Penelope Hill, Gail Johnson, Martin Keenan and James Hurley. Gareth Wall will be substituting as a member representative today. For the benefit of actually the membership of the board and any viewers watching, because we have got some new members on the board, I'd like to ask board members just to briefly put their cameras and microphones on and introduce themselves. I'll call you out. If you could just sort of say who you are, your position on the board, and very briefly your day job or background. I'll start myself. So I'm Jolyon Adam. I'm the employer representative for the Schools and Academies pool. Within my day job, I'm the finance director for a local authority owned trading company. I believe James Kidd is joining us, but he's not here at the minute, so we'll pick him up later. But Liz, could I ask you to briefly introduce yourself?
You can. Liz Needham, County Councillor for the London Colney Division and an accountant in real life. and I think I've been put on this board because I'm an accountant and nobody else wanted it.
Thanks, Liz. Rob McCarthy.
Yeah, I'm Rob McCarthy. I'm a standing substitute employers representative, as I understand it. And my nomination is made by the Hertfordshire Association of Parish and Town Councils, of which I'm the current chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Thank you. Brian.
Let's get the microphone on. Good morning, all. Brian Kane, employer substitute rep for Watford Borough Council. Day job is as an HR advisor.
Thanks, Brian. And then on the member representatives, Sharon.
Morning, everyone. So I'm Sharon. I'm a member rep. I'm a deferred member and a former pensions manager at the University of Hertfordshire. So I'm a pensions professional by trade. Thank you.
Thank you. And then finally, Gareth.
Morning, everyone. I'm alternate member rep, and I used to work for Stevenage. I currently work for Barnet Council.
Cool. Thanks, Gareth. Thank you, members. So just before we get into the main agenda, briefly need to highlight any declarations of interest. So if members have any financial or pecuniary interests. Yes.
There's a hand up.
Hi, James. Sorry.
Sorry, I was online. I think I've dropped onto the second page, so that's probably why you didn't see me. So.
Sorry. Apologies. Oh, you've gone on mute, I think.
Sorry. Hiya, I'm James Kidd. I'm the employer representative for Hertfordshire Constabulary, and I'm the head of financing.
Cool. Thank you, James. And just to know, I think James may duck out of the meeting at a point, but we're still core up, so everything will continue. In terms of declarations of interest, yes, if members could declare any financial or pecuniary interests related to specific matters on the agenda now. Not seeing any, so I'm assuming we're fine on that regard. So the first item on the agenda is to agree the minutes from the meeting held on the 21st of March 2025. If you could please just note in the chat that you're content to agree the content of those minutes. If you have any points to raise otherwise, please raise a hand. Very good. I think we can take those minutes as agreed. Thank you, Teresa. So move to the first substantive item on the agenda, which is the draft audit plan. I think briefly we're going to hear from Rob Winterton, who's then going to hand over to Mohammed and Sudanshu from KPMG. Over to you, Rob.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, I'm Robert Winterton. I'm the finance manager for the pension fund. And this report is the external auditor's plan for the audit of the financial statements of the Hertfordshire Pension Fund for the year ended 31st March 2025. This report has already been presented to the Audit and Pensions Committees. The report at Appendix A, which starts on Agenda Pack page 13, outlines KPMG's risk assessment and planned audit approach. We've been working with KPMG on the planning activities since January, and now that the draft accounts have been published on the 30th of June, they've started to move on to the year-end audit. If there are thought to be any significant changes to the planned audit approach, KPMG will communicate subsequently. KPMG have noted in the plan that there's one significant risk and 3 other audit risks as shown on Agenda Pack page 17. On the significant risk, this was also referred to in the 2023-24 audit. It is around the fund not enforcing segregation of duty controls over the posting of journals, specifically below 500,000. Based on this, the fund has implemented a process that now all manual journals will need to be parked and posted by different officers to mitigate against this. However, that's only started from the 1st of April 2025, so it will still be noted as a risk in the 2024-25 accounts. That's all I was going to say, so I'm going to hand you now over to our audit team of Sudanshu and Mohammed.
Good morning, Chair. Robert and esteemed members of the board. Thank you for the opportunity to present today. My name is Sudanshu Dadich. I am an audit manager with KPMG, responsible for the audit of Hertfordshire Pension Fund. Today, we'll be discussing the audit plan and strategy for 2024-25 financial statements as outlined in the page 13 of the pack. The purpose of this document is to communicate the key areas which we are required to address under the auditing standards, ethical standards, and legislation, specifically the Local Audit and Accountability Act. Our goal is to ensure transparency and accountability in our audit process. So as a starting point, before we formulate any audit plan, we begin by gaining a comprehensive understanding of the pension fund, the processes, the analyzing transactions, assessing the risks, evaluating the systems and the processes and within the organization, which lays at the foundation understanding which allows us to make the informed decisions in developing our audit plan and strategy to move forward. So if you'll look at the page 15 of the agenda pack or page 3 of the document, we discuss materiality, which is set at 1% of the total assets of the fund. This is quite a conservative approach, typically looking at a public sector pension fund. So we have kept it as on the conservative norms. So our procedures are designed to identify not only the issues which are at this level, but it will be discussed at an aggregated level as well, the errors or the issues at lower level. If we identify as such any qualitative issues in that requires your attention, we will be highlighting those in our year-end report as part of our reporting. So as we consider materiality, we also assess risk. We focus on the key risks that could lead to a material misstatement. So my colleague Mohammed will now provide an update on these risks and progress of the audit procedures. Since the report was published in May, by now we have made a good progress in terms of audit. So I'll hand over to Mohammed now.
Thanks, Sudhanshu. Good morning, members. You'll note that on page 18 of the agenda summarizes our risk of management override of control. You will note that consistent to prior year, this is the only significant risk on the audit that we have. This remains a significant risk as per the requirements of the auditing standards. This is because management is in a unique position to perpetuate fraud because of their ability to manipulate accounting records and prepare fraudulent financial statements by overriding controls that otherwise appear to be operating effectively. In response to the risk, we have performed a number of procedures. The major ones are performed walkthrough of the financial reporting process to obtain an understanding of the financial reporting process, evaluate the selection and application of the accounting policies, and perform journals testing by evaluating the completeness of the population, and then screening and testing the high-risk journals based on high-risk criteria. As of today, we have received the journals listing and are in the process of screening these journals. We have also noted a control deficiency in the financial reporting process, which Rob earlier mentions, that journals below 500K are not required to be approved by a secondary member. On page 19, we have risk on investments that these are not complete, do not exist, or are not accurately recorded. We are of the view that there is no change in audit risk considered for testing completeness and accuracy of the investments. This is because the process for recording and processing of transactions pertaining to investments remains consistent to prior year. In response to the risk, we'll perform the following procedures. Gain an understanding of the process over the completeness, existence, and accuracy of level 1, level 2, and level 3 investments. Obtain direct confirmations from fund managers and custodian. Vouch purchases and sales to fund managers report and custodian reports, and recalculate change in market value. As of now, we are in the process of our testing. We have received the confirmation from fund managers and are in the process of vouching sales and purchases and recalculations. On page 20, we have risk of valuation of level 1, 2, and 3 investments. We have assessed this as a higher risk, which is consistent with prior year. This is because of the estimation uncertainty resulting from unobservable input to these investments, as well as the amounts of the balance on the financial statements. In response to the risk, we will be engaging our specialist to value these level 1 and level 2 investments. And for level 3 investments, we will perform a review of the NAV statements by obtaining unaudited NAV and comparing them with the audited financial statements. We have been able to test most of the investments till date and have not noted any material differences in our testing. We are currently in the process of testing level 3 investments and are awaiting NAV from some of the fund managers. On page 21, we have risk that actuarial position is not appropriately presented in the financial statements. The value of the actuarial liability is an estimate involving the selection of appropriate actuarial assumptions, most notably the discount rate applied to the pension fund's liability, inflation rates, and mortalities. Therefore, there is a risk that these are not appropriately disclosed in the financial statements, as these are not recognized in the financial statements, rather disclosed in the notes. In response to the risk, we will continue to involve our actuarial specialist to review the fund's actuarial position, key assumptions selected by the actuarial specialist, and its special events that has occurred during the year. Our actuaries are in the process of their testing and have not noted anything noteworthy till date. Then another important communication is on page 27, where we communicate to you, the audit team. At the time of preparation of this audit plan, Mihul was the engagement manager. However, he has now left and Sudhanshu will lead the engagement from now onwards. I will now pass back to Sudhanshu to present the remainder of the plan. Thanks.
Thanks, Mohammed. So I'll cover the key bits from now on. So regarding the fees, as outlined on the page 28 of the agenda pack, these are determined by public sector audit appointments, short for PSAA, and as you are also consulted annually as part of their fees setting process. Last year, we applied charges above the base level due to some additional assurance requests from other auditors within the pension scheme. So this year we have, till yesterday, I think we have received 4 such requests. However, it is still too early to provide a reliable fee estimate. So I'll ensure that both the offices and the committees are kept informed as further details of further such requests becomes available. With regards to the timelines, as outlined on the page 29 of the agenda pack, we remain on track with the audit schedule. Our intention is to present the year-end report at November committee meeting, followed by the issuance of a final opinion once both council and the pension funds are complete. However, due to the significant volume of the ongoing consultations and the scopes and the timing of the local government audits, this schedule may be subject to change. We'll continue to monitor developments closely and provide timely updates should any adjustment be necessary in this regards. So finally, as noted on page 30 of the agenda pack, we confirm our independence in accordance with ethical standards. We have established robust system and procedures to ensure our independence is maintained throughout the audit. I can confirm there are no matters to report in relation to fee or independence or any other such matter which hinders our independence in this regards. So that's basically concludes our presentation for the external audit plan. I would be pleased to take any questions through the chair. Thank you.
Thanks all. I just have one question, which might be a little bit for Rob, but also for yourself, Sudhanshu, just around obviously the last year accounts, so 23-24, there were numerous issues, not necessarily through a fault of the fund or anything, factors that led to delays in the audits and the accounts being signed off. Is it expected that the 24-25 accounts are going to be, that's been resolved and they're more likely to be delivered to the schedule that the authority requires?
As far as I'm concerned, officers, we resolved sort of issues around queries last year, which is probably more around the transition between previous auditor to the new auditors, KPMG. So I'm not aware of anything that could possibly crop up and cause any delay, but happy for KPMG to state otherwise.
Sure. From the pension fund side, I'm not we don't have any such issues for the signing, but it's for the pension fund, the accounts are consolidated with the council accounts. Mm-hmm. So we cannot sign until the council audit is complete. So that's why we had to sign at the time that both the audits are in a position to so that's why we are not that worried about the pension fund, but from the council side, we might face some delays. So I think we'll be able to sign before the backstop date this year, but not sure about the timeline because I'm not involved in the council side. So that's the main challenge around.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any questions from members around this item? Not seeing any hands raised, so I will move. The recommendation is that the pension board notes and comments upon the KPMG audit plans for the pension fund accounts. So if you could mark in the comments that you have noted the report, please. Thanks all, and thanks KPMG colleagues. I believe you can kind of drop off the call now. Thank you for your presentation. So that moves us to the next item 3, which is the Pension Fund Risk Register report, and this is from Alison Sharp. I think you're going to present this.
Yeah, that's me. Hi everyone, I'm Alison Sharp. I'm the lead pension governance officer at the fund. So this is the risk register report for the period January to March 2025. The register can be viewed in Appendix A of the report. During the quarter, there was no movement in the ratings of risk listed on the register, but we continue to monitor and work to maintain and reduce these where possible. We have been working with our actuary, Barnett Waddingham, to complete a review of our risk policy, which is shown in Appendix B. The policy has been updated with consideration of the Pension Regulator's General Code of Practice and the expected triennial governance reviews following the outcome of the Fit for Future consultation. The new policy has been simplified, has a simplified scoring matrix and a new look register, which is shown in Appendix C, and it includes an accepted risk tolerance level and risk owner. The new look register has additional functionality and will automatically produce a dashboard, which is shown in Appendix D. The updated risk policy and the new look register was approved at the recent pension committee. So I look forward to hearing any comments you have on this, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Alison. Yeah, members, if you have any questions, please feel free to raise hands. I just had one comment rather than a question. So it's on the Appendix C, I believe, which is the alternative or new risk register summary proposed on page 73. So firstly, just to commend it and say it looks a lot cleaner and a lot easier to kind of see the risks highlighted and what's changing. Just a suggestion or recommendation that where you have that direction of travel indicator sort of 5 columns in and a date of change, some considerations given to flagging when that risk was last reviewed, so we know that okay, it's staying flat and it was reviewed 6 monthly and this was the date of the last review, rather than just having a date when there is a change, because it kind of suggests that the other things haven't been reviewed, whereas actually I know they are reviewed a lot more regularly than that. So it's just about having that clarity. You can see these are all reviewed at a certain point and this is the date the risk changed. Gives a bit more clarity about that. That's the only comment I had. I can't see any hands raised.
No, that's really helpful, Jodon. So we'll obviously take that into consideration and get that made more clear.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you.
I can't see any hands raised, so the recommendation on this item is that the pension board comments on and notes the content of this report and the risk register at Appendix A, and also that the pension board notes the updated risk management policy at Appendix B and the subsequent changes to the risk register detailed. So if colleagues are content to note those on the item. Thank you all. So this moves us to agenda item 4, which is the Hertfordshire LGPS Q4 LPPA performance report. And I think we're going straight to Chris Batts from LPPA for this one.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, board. Nice to be with you. This is my first board, so look forward to questions and discussion as we go. So I was just going to provide a sort of verbal, take the quarterly report for that's quarter 4 ending March that was in the appendix. So I'll take that as read, but I'll just provide an overview on that verbally. So casework performance for the quarter was 98.9. And then for the overall year, it was 98.2, which is above the 95% service level target in there. So a positive position on that front. In terms of case work and volumes, Q4 had an increase. That's a bit seasonal as well. There were notable increases around aggregation and transfer work, which comes off the back of new starters and can take a while to even itself out. So nothing that particularly surprises or scares us in that sense. That's just work that will run through. Positive to note that on the employer front, the monthly return position is a good one now. A lot of work's gone on there with employers themselves, our teams, and indeed the officers at Hertfordshire to get into a much better position on the returns. That said, I think there's still work to do, and we'll continue our engagement with employers around the timeliness of leaver notification. That comes through in some of the statistics and graphs that are in the pack. When we look at it's an aspirational target to pay within 30 days for an active retirement. That's on the basis that you receive a salary in the 1 month and you'll want a payment in the following month. There's bills to pay, etc. So that's where that comes from. Where we do get notifications on time, the percentages are quite good in terms of the retirees receiving those payments. So it's just the work to get the notification, and we'll continue engaging with employers on that. I think there's an education piece perhaps as well to help them understand the value and why we want them early. It's not just us being difficult or challenging. That, it benefits the members at the end of the day in their experience and them getting money in retirement cases. Those with AVCs continue to be a bit of a problem in terms of disinvestment of AVC, so achieving that 30-day becomes a bit of a challenge for those. One of the things that we're looking to do on the employer front, we're talking internally about the idea of an employer relationship manager to have regular meetings with large employers, 1,000+ members perhaps, to be decided. And then we can check regularly so we can understand the challenges that employers go through in things like their payroll systems and how they record leavers, etc. So that's a bit of a work in progress, but I think that'll be quite a positive move, certainly on the engagement front and helping employers and helping us and therefore helping members. On the contact centre, within service level there on the average wait time beneath the 4 minutes. As you build up towards the end of that calendar year, you see that we're slightly up on calls. That's expected, and again seasonal, just before the pensions increase and P60s for pensioners, etc. Customer satisfaction. Mixed feelings on this one, I guess, in the sense that the return rates of surveys continues to be lower than where we would like. We have previously tried incentivising. I think there was a prize draw for some vouchers or something, but that didn't make a difference, particularly for the period that we tried it across all of LPPA. But the good news is that where we are getting surveys back, the feedback's pretty good. Quite often you find with surveys it's a form of expressing dissatisfaction, let's say, when you've not got something good to say. So it's good to see a positive response on the surveys, and we'll continue to sort of issue them, and hopefully in time we'll see an uptick in return rates. So in terms of pension points, a pension point is our online portal for members. We've got continued increase in registrations, which is positive, I think, driven by some of our automation that we're rolling out, and I'll talk a bit about that through a project update. But we're in an okay position on that. I think there is no best practice or benchmark. It varies depending on what the pension scheme is and what you can do on the portal. So we're happy with that, I think. In terms of our projects, I'll just give you a quick update on some of those. So ESIP is our efficiency and service improvement program. We've done quite a bit of this of work on this over time, most notably around the retirement journey. So we started with some automated processes, and apologies, you probably had some of this update in previous board meetings. So automated deferred retirement processes for quotes. We've now literally in the last weeks gone live with the other end of the process in terms of the payments. So in theory, we're quite close to a fully automated, potentially, best case scenario for deferred cases. So that's from quotes to filling out a form to receiving payment. So that's quite good. We've rolled out an online retirement form for those retiring. Early signs of that are really positive. So in terms of the forms being returned themselves, we've seen that in the early rollout of this, we had 70% of return forms online, which compared to about 40% paper. So we're getting a much better response rate. But perhaps more importantly, the accuracy of those forms, because they're online and they can apply business logic and you can't move on until it's fully completed, etc. The numbers of errors are much reduced, which saves the to and the fro in terms of backwards and forwards with queries, but also the return timescales. I think we were, check my numbers, it was about 5 days for an online form compared with about 30 for paper. So you can see the speed from the online experience is much improved as well. There's another bit that we've got in there that's about bank account verification. So we'd always had the verification that it was a legitimate sort code and account number. We've gone that next step now, and you can think of this on your personal banking apps, where it checks the payee to those details. So that adds more security and anti-fraud type measures around payments. So that's another good implementation there. We're also looking at leaver form. That's something that I think will benefit employers as well. That will be online. That's going to be rolled out later this year. It's in testing. We anticipate Q3. That again helps remove the need for errors and the to and fro on pay queries, because we can do some validation at input stage. You won't need to input for information that we already know about the member, so there's a time saver there. So I think that will be a big thing that will help employers as well. In terms of other projects, it's obviously a key time for valuation. So valuation, I believe, is due to be submitted to the actuary next week, I think, off the top of my head. I'm sure Taryn will correct me if that's wrong. That's slightly delayed, and we're using a format which doesn't include McLeod data. That's been discussed with actuaries and with officers. A lot of data cleanse has been done to be able to get that in a good position for submission, and we'll wait and see what the queries that fall out. So that's due to be submitted to the actuary any time, as I say. And just to reiterate, and thanks to employers for the excellent position on monthly returns, which obviously informs that greatly. In terms of data, slight improvement on our data scores at the end of Q4. That will further improve through the work that's been done since March on valuation. So we'd expect those to increase further. There was other work done on data that was required for both valuation, also for pensions dashboard. So pensions dashboard is another project that I'm pleased to report is tracking green. That's for connectivity in October of this year. And the reason I emphasize the connectivity is that's the first part of it. It's obviously a key deadline that we have to meet, but business readiness is underway for when members actually access the system, which could be as much as a year away still. But we want to get ahead of that game because that's the key bit when people start viewing it and having queries. So we need to be on the front foot. And then just very quickly, McLeod is the other big regulatory project. We've made some good progress. We've had some challenges with the software provider, if I'm being open and honest, but we're working with those closely to get to where we need to. So we've run what we call eligibility checks to identify the population that are actually impacted by McLeod. And it's one of these projects, there's a lot of work that goes in for fairly little impact in terms of there only being 16% that are eligible for McLeod across the membership. Having done that eligibility, it puts us in a good position to start the production of annual benefit statements for this year for the active and the deferred members. There's a cut-off or a deadline of the 31st of August. So we're focused on those that are not eligible first. So by that, I mean a statement that doesn't need to include anything extra. Those that are impacted by McLeod will have an additional section, if you like, within the benefit statement that talks about the service, the McLeod service, and gives them details of what that is. That will still be done by the 31st of August, where we've got the data to be able to do so. So that's well underway. We're providing regular updates to officers to keep them informed of the position. But yeah, a lot of work and a lot of focus. That is our main focus alongside the SLA work. I've probably said quite a bit already, so I'll pause for thought and questions. Happy to answer any.
Sharon, if you've got a question.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the update on McLeod. That was you covered one of my questions there. So yeah, welcome the positive results across the service. That's really good to hear that continued good results from everybody on the team. As a board, we consistently raised concerns over the 4,000 or over 4,000 deferreds without an address, and sort of over 3,000 members that are likely to be over retirement age. So I just wanted to continue to urge that we do focus efforts on tracing members and communicating with members about retirement options. Thank you.
Yeah, and to that point, there is a bit of work that we're doing. We have to go through a bit of procurement because of the legalities and the arrangement we have with one of our suppliers called Target that do the tracing. So we are looking at that, and that will form part because it's required for dashboard, if nothing else. So yes, that is being looked at.
Just to follow up on that, Sharon, that is something that we are also supporting, and we're keen to also do some mortality checks on deferred members over a certain age as well. So yeah, we're looking into that. It just takes a bit of time for the reasons that Chris has explained.
Yeah, thank you both.
Cool. Thanks for raising that, Sharon. I just had one question, Chris, which is looking at the sort of active to retirement and employer retirement notifications. Obviously, that's on page 96 of the agenda pack, and that's obviously one of the more challenging areas in terms of where employers are submitting that information late. I was just wondering, though, on the next page, it talks about where that notification is on time. There's a graph showing how many of those payments are made within 30 days, and taking your point about AVCs can add some complexity there. But still, the payments made within 30 days for March was good, so 95%, but up to then it had been quite variable. Is that something that's improved and we're likely to see that higher level carrying on? Because it sounds like the employers are doing everything on their end. They've had the notification over to the LPP within time. Exclude the AVC ones because they're a bit more complicated, but it's still not quite been as high as we might have liked until March.
No, and if you look at the year, you're quite right, that 90% is a bit of an outlier, and I'd love to say that is an improvement that will continue to flow in that vein. I think there are a number of contributing factors where there are delays, and that might be queries on pay where you have to go back to the employer for some validation, and the return of the member forms themselves can add to that delay, whether that's through postal or through errors in submission. So some of the improvements that I talked about earlier will help that in time as they bed in. So I'd hope to see a higher level through 25, 26. So yeah, we're doing the right things to address that, but yeah, there can be a number of contributing factors.
Okay, thank you. If there aren't any other questions on that item, then I'm just going to ask the board to note and comment on the report and appendices via the chat. Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Taryn, for contribution to that item. So the next item, item 5, is the Employer Risk and Governance Report, which is back to Alison.
Thank you. So this is the Employer Risk and Governance Report for January to March 25. This risk report and register focuses specifically on the risks associated to individual employers of the fund. During the quarter, the number of risks in the red category decreased by 3, leaving 7 remaining. The breakdown of these 7 red risks are detailed within table 3 of the report. 2 of the red risks relate to ceased employers with outstanding deficits. 4 relate to employers with no indemnity arrangements, and these are historical employers who joined the fund at a time when regulations did not require admission bodies to have security arrangements in place. Fund officers are currently working with Barnet Waddingham to complete a risk analysis for admitted bodies, which will look to provide solution to minimise their risks. And the final red risk is not a true red risk, as this is due to amalgamation of green and amber risks, which has resulted in that one employer having a red risk score due to amalgamated risks. So that was all I was going to say on the report, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Alison. Are there any questions for Alison on the risk and governance report? No, I just like to say it's really good to see that progress against the number of employers in those risk categories continuing to kind of chip away at that red risk group. So well done to the team on that. The recommendation is that we ask to comment and note on the contents of this report. So if members are content, I'd ask you to do that in the chat. Perfect. Thank you. So we'll move to item 6, which is a training update from Taryn.
Thank you, Chair. So this report is to provide an update on the training attendance during 2024-25. To give you a bit of background, board members are required under the regulations to have sufficient knowledge and understanding to undertake their role on the board. The Scheme Advisory Board commissioned a review of the LGPS governance, which became known as the Good Governance Project. And one of the recommendations following this project is to extend the same requirements to committee members. This recommendation has subsequently been included in 2 consultations, culminating in a response from the government along the lines that they will continue with the knowledge and training requirement that applies to individuals rather than the committee as a whole, and further guidance will be provided. We do expect there to be a requirement to publish a training strategy along with our training plan for committee, board members and officers. So training is currently delivered through various means, and we've drafted a training plan for the year ahead, which is based around what needs to be delivered this year. But as always, this is subject to change as and when required. And we're open to specific training requests, and we'll do our best to accommodate. And we understand that there may be a preference of style of delivery, and we're happy to accommodate these preferences where possible. Later in the year, probably during Q4, we intend to undertake a knowledge and understanding assessment for which the results may need to be published, but that depends on what guidance comes out from the Scheme Advisory Board. And we will also use those results to formulate the following year's training plan. So that's what I was going to say on that, and thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Thanks, Taryn. If members want to raise their hands if there's any questions, I wanted to kick off just by commenting whilst a note in the report it specifies that the board members have a statutory responsibility around training and understanding, and that's not the same for committee members. It is a bit concerning to note the table on agenda pack page 156, table 3.2, just showing the difference of attendance between committee members around that training and board members, given that committee members are the ones ultimately making those decisions. And while some of them may well come from financial backgrounds or sectors where they're well versed in pension matters, that's not a guarantee. So I'd like to make the comment or suggestion that the pension committee chair considers how that training of committee members could be supported endorsed and almost checked and validated to ensure that they're content that the committee does have the skills and knowledge to make those decisions, because they are very significant decisions around very large sums of money in terms of investment strategy, different approaches around some complex areas like equity protection and things which I'm conscious may be novel to a lot of people. There's also a lot going on in the world of pensions around the pooling, the changes in pooling. So there's a lot of change. I'd welcome the chair having some consideration of how they can have some confidence that the committee's got that knowledge and skills. I do appreciate it's pretty much a new committee now. So that was then, and now it's a new body. So it's probably something more for taking forwards than looking back at the past. Did anyone else have any other? Oh, sorry, Taryn, did you want to come back on?
I was just going to say thank you, noted. Yeah, we'll feed that back to the chair of the Pensions Committee and appreciate your support as well in pushing this training forward.
And I'm sure the board are happy to kind of work with the chair on how that might look. Any other questions or comments from board? I'm not seeing any. So the pension board members are asked to note the content of this report and also make a commitment to undertake training going forwards to improve and maintain their knowledge and understanding of the local government scheme. So if members are happy to note and agree that. Thanks all. Thanks, Taryn. That's been confirmed. Okay, so moving to the last main item on the Part 1 agenda is the investment performance report as at 31st of March 2025, and this is going to be presented by Sandy Dixon from Mercer, the fund's investment consultant.
Thanks, Chair. Hopefully everyone can see and hear me. Yeah, great. So my plan was to sort of the performance report goes from 31st December to 31st of March this year. So I was going to review the market background, what happened in the quarter, translate that to what happened in terms of the performance of the fund. We'll look back because obviously 31st of March is actual evaluation day, so we'll see what's happened in the last 3 years, trying to put that into context compared to the last valuation. Then I'm very conscious that we're sort of in the middle of July now, so I'll give an update over the last 3 months to try and give a bit of clarity on what's happened over the last 3 months, a bit of forward guidance. So I refer to it as Q1, so calendar quarters, so 31st December to 31st of March. The market and economies was going pretty well actually over the first sort of January and early February. Markets then started to have a bit of nervousness for two real main reasons. First of all, US President Trump was announcing sort of tariffs on Mexico and Canada, obviously very big parts of that North American trading bloc, which was thought to impact sort of global economy. So that sort of made markets slightly nervous. But then also there was a DeepSeek, so this Chinese artificial intelligence company that seemed to threaten the dominance of the AI and the artificial intelligence technology stocks, which have been driving investment markets over the sort of last 18 months. So those two things combined actually meant that when you look at the end of the quarter, global equities were down around 4% over that period, and even bonds were down too. So in terms of market, it was quite a poor market condition. Additionally, the US dollar started to fall as well, which has been quite a strength. And as an investor as a sterling investor investing overseas, the US is quite a large part of the investment market. When the dollar falls, obviously that impacts investments. Some of that is hedged, so that currency impact is hedged to a degree, but not fully. So overall, that meant equities down, as I say, about 4%. Translating that to sort of the fund overall, it meant the benchmark return for the fund was down about 0.7%. The actual performance of the fund was down just over 1%, so a slight fall over that period, when in reality most markets were down, so not a surprise. The real main reason probably why the fund sort of underperformed the benchmark was actually equities were down more than most other assets, and the fund actually had a slight overweight position to equities. So if you have more in the assets that are falling to the greatest extent, that does tend to lead to some underperformance, as well as probably some impact from the investment managers as well, sort of underperforming. So that's 3 months. Looking out for longer terms, obviously it's a pension fund, we're looking to fund benefits to beneficiaries over the decades to come. So looking at long-term performance is quite important. Over the very long term, sort of 10 years and 5 years, the fund returns sort of 5.8% per annum over 5 years and about 5.7, 5.6 over 10 years. So that compounds over time. So that's pretty strong performance over the long term. The one number I did want to look at was the 3-year number. Now, obviously, we go through the valuation every 3 years. The last valuation conducted by the former sort of actuary, Hymans Robertson, the funding level was about 106%, so very well funded. The discount rate, so that's the sort of rate of return, which should be prudent, rate of return on assets going forward to put a present value on the liabilities, was 3.8% per annum. If you look at the performance report, and I'm looking at page 181, the fund actually returned 1.2% per annum over the 3 years since the last valuation. So from an asset, just looking at the investment side of the balance sheet only, clearly the assets have underperformed that discount rate. So if you're saying all else equal, you might expect funding level to reduce slightly. Clearly things aren't all else equal and the discount rate changes, as you know, and that's why the funding levels probably stayed the same. Now, the reason why performance has been probably below that sort of long-term expectation over those 3 years really goes back to sort of what happened in 2022, 2023. So you had the Russian invasion of Ukraine, you had real high increases in interest rates, and you saw a negative reaction from equities and from bonds. And it's particularly over that period, bonds fell quite significantly in value. So if I look at the 1 year figure to the end of 2023, so 31st of March 2023, so that first year of that 3 year cycle, the fund was actually down nearly 7% over that period because of those sort of market conditions. 2024, bit of recovery, returned 9.4%. So obviously making back ground, but obviously if you fall 7% just to get back to where you are, you almost need to get 8% before you then go on. And then, as you can see in the performance report, this time round, the last year to 31st of March 2025 has been 2.4%. So when you sum all them up together, that means the fund only returned about 1% per annum over the last 3 years. So disappointing in terms of that long-term context, but understandable given the real impact that you saw on markets, particularly on the bond assets, which are more cash flow and aligned to the liabilities, having pretty poor time over that period in terms of absolute performance. Having said all that, the funding level is still very, very strong, very stable. I think looking forward, obviously, whereas previously yields on bonds are very low, now they're a lot more attractive. So it just opens up a nice opportunity set, and that'll be something that we'll be considering as part of the committee reviewing the investment strategy going forward. So that's sort of the backward-looking thing. A little bit of an update to Q2. So that's 31st of March to 30th of June, and then I'll pause for any questions. The quarter started with quite high levels of volatility following the Liberation Day announcements by US President Trump on the 2nd of April. Markets reacted very poorly. One, they don't like tariffs, it's just negative for economic growth. And then two, when they kind of realized how those tariffs had been calculated and that they were even to apply to countries that had no actual population other than penguins, that clearly sowed a bit of seed of doubt as to the competencies of the administration on economic policy. And so you saw a real huge reaction initially with markets sort of down sort of 20-25% from their peak in February, really as a result of Liberation Day. Additionally, the US dollar fell quite significantly as well. So if I'm looking at sterling against dollar, sterling strengthened about 6% over that last 3 months, just as sort of investors sort of took assets away from the US. Ultimately, because of some of those reactions, equity markets, also the US Treasury bond market, there was a pause. So tariffs have been paused, and that was announced about a week after they were first put on. They're still paused. The pause has been delayed until the 1st of August. And in the interim period, I think markets have kind of come to terms. I think actually, ultimately, the president will give in to markets. You then also have the support of central banks. And actually, economic data, which everyone thought at the time when tariffs were first applied was going to be pretty poor, pretty terrible. We're on course for sort of recessions. Actually, economic data has held up relatively well already across developed markets. That's given confidence back to markets that actually, okay, the worst case scenarios we're potentially pricing in probably the risks of those have receded a bit, and actually there's some potentially pretty going to muddle through this and be okay economically. So that's why you've had that more positive news. Investors buying the dip, is what they say, especially in the retail investors. So what we've had over Q2 is positive markets, they say. And sorry, my thing's frozen now. There we are. So global markets are about 5% in sterling terms. Now remember, with the dollar having fallen 6% against sterling, in actual underlying, looking at the S&P, it'd be up a lot more than that. So equity markets up around 5%, and even bond markets have been positive as well. So really across the board, assets up. So bit of forward guidance for 30th of June, I'd expect pretty positive performance over that quarter, potentially maybe assets up 2% or more because of positive news across the board in terms of assets. And then we'll have to wait and see what happens over August and whether tariffs continue to be applied or whether there's further pauses and negotiations. But that's obviously dominating quite a lot of thinking and is continued to be quite a significant risk to global markets. With that, I'll stop and pause and have to answer any questions on the fund.
Thanks, Andy. James, let's go for a question.
Hi there. So just with relation to the Liberation Day announcement on the 2nd of April, I guess it was lucky that wasn't 3 days earlier, but in terms of the accounts. So I'm just thinking that back to the accounts, so probably a question for the team more than for yourself, Sandy. So first of all, has that led to any complexities around valuation of assets? Because I know that a lot of assets don't have an active market per se, so has that been complicated in getting that 31st of March valuation? And the follow-up to that is there, or are there any requirements for post-balance sheet events to be put into the accounts? This is for 24-25's accounts, because of the volatility that has been experienced soon after year end. And has that been discussed with KPMG?
So morning all, Phil Prasad, Pooling Investment Analyst for the fund, so I can answer this one. So regarding the level 3 assets, there hasn't been any issues with those this year because of the later deadline, which was the June publication. We actually had most of our assets March data has arrived. There was only one level 3 manager, which was Standard Life, which is a private equity manager that we have, that hadn't come in, so we used December valuations, but because that fund is mainly liquidating now, it's under £1 million in total value. Regarding speaking to KPMG, we got if there needs to be a post-balance sheet event. We haven't spoken to them, but obviously markets have bounced back, as Sandy had said, to this point. So I've sent the June data across to Mercer this morning, and we're about 150 million up from the March valuations. So I don't expect there to be a post-balance sheet event in the accounts.
Lovely, thank you very much.
Cool, thanks for that, James. Sandy, I just had one question. Obviously, I take your point about the looking back 3-year performance. We've been pretty much in line with the benchmark, but that has been lower than the expectation at the last valuation. I think you said the discount rate was maybe 3.8 or 3.6%, and we hit near a 1.2. Obviously, for the next valuation, that discount rate is again a look forward and a long-term projection of returns. Do you think that is likely to be significantly impacted by current volatility, or is that long-term projection still in the order of the sort of 3 to 4%, or do you think it being materially changed?
So yeah, obviously I'm not the actuary, so I'm thinking as you know, working for an actual firm and knowing actuaries quite well. I mean, so this is more of a, to answer your question, Chair, rather than being anything definitive, because I'll leave Barnett as the actuary to re-answer this. I mean, the way we see it, I think equities from here compared to what they were 3 years, probably similar to what they were. We had a big fall and then it's kind of recovered. So from that perspective, in terms of asset returns, I think equities are probably fairly similar. In fact, actually equities the last 3 years are probably in totality returned, 7-8% maybe. So probably in line with that long term. What has changed is expected is yields on bonds. So if you look at sort of yield 20-year the 20-year gilt yield, so lending to the UK government over 20 years, it's now at sort of 5.4%. 3 years ago, it would have been around 1%. So the returns from that particular asset class are much higher. So overall, when you're looking at total assets, I would expect the discount rate to be higher than it was last time. But clearly that actually has to have some prudence. There's lots more assumption than just a discount rate as well. But yeah, I would expect it to be higher than 3.8 going forward from the actuary. But I can see that Taryn's got her hand up, so she might have more accurate numbers than I do.
Yeah, Taryn.
Thanks. I don't actually have the numbers yet, but I just wanted to say that Barnet Waddingham will be coming to the next pension board. But they also use a smoothing on discount rates, which is over a 6-month period. But they'll explain more about how they do that at the next board meeting.
Okay, no, thanks. It's just useful to get that kind of direction of travel. I'm wondering whether that will compensate at all for the kind of underperformance. But again, that's an actuarial thing. They'll bring it all together. But thank you for that. If there's no other comments on that item, I'll ask the board to note the investment performance report via the comments. Thank you, that's been noted. Item 8 on the part 1 agenda is just confirming the dates of future meetings, so no action required on those other than for asking members to kind of check their diaries in their own time. Item 9 is other part 1 business, of which there is none notified, which just leaves me to make a short statement to move us into part 2, and then I'll wait for the Democratic Services colleagues to confirm there's no recording before we move to part 2. So I just need to read out the statement that under section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972, the press and public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information relating to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the council, as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 of schedule 12A to the said act, and the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. And with that, I will just wait for Teresa to confirm the broadcast has stopped and we are okay to move into part 2.